Big task for me is to get free of that training that our families gave us, the institutions we live within give us, our society gives us, so that we are not just echoing the voices of the world that surrounds us, that invades us. It's very hard to get rid of those voices. It's certainly very hard for me, and I think it's hard for young actors, young creators, so that I think of contacting the unconscious. And I'm very interested in psychoanalysis and all kinds of disciplines, including spiritual disciplines, that try to get to some other level, some other reality. But it's very tricky to know whether that other level is just what's out there in the world, pummeling us in our daily lives for all of our lives, or some other source. And I tend to think that the only way to get in touch with something that is, in a sense, very impersonal, you see, it isn't a subjective sense of my own depth psychology that I'm interested in. People have called my theater solipsistic. I don't think it really is, because what I'm really trying to do is to erase all reference points and see what comes when you have erased all reference points. You know, there's a famous psychoanalyst from England, who actually was Beckett's psychoanalyst, Wilfred Bion. And he talks about this completely unknowable other and how you have to lose all memory, lose all knowledge, in fact, to try to make contact with this other thing. And basically, I've tried to do that my whole life. I've tried to operate in terms of a kind of negative theology. You know, when people talk, in the olden days, when people talked about God, it was the approach of negative theology that essentially was saying, you get to know God by knowing everything that he is not. God is not this, God is not this. And in the same way, when I'm working, I try to return to the source of my own blindness and my own stupidity. Now, am I lying? Because I may be kidding myself, and I may be kidding other people. Because the fact of the matter is that at the same time, I am extremely well read, and I am extremely knowledgeable about the history of the world, the history of art in the world, the history of philosophy. So for me to say, oh, I want to return to my essential stupidity, does that mean something different than, for instance, a young person who hasn't been exposed to very much yet? Well, that's a tricky subject, and I don't know. I also know that for many years, I've said that I think I was a more advanced writer than director. Because when I'm a writer, I can lie on my couch a lot of the day, read snatches of books from my very extensive library, write a few lines of dialogue that just seem to be coming out of the air. And I'm essentially creating from a position that is a very passive position. And I think from that passive position, things come through me that are not censored by the Richard that wants to get ahead in the world, wants to be admired by people. Now, when I become a director and start directing my own material or other people's material, then I've always had the feeling that I am not courageous enough to stand up in front of my cast and be baffled and be emptied by my own conscious lack of knowledge the way that I am when I'm writing. So to be a director, I become a total control freak. I become energized. I become a very dominant, friendly personality who's controlling everything and controlling every moment. And that's a different kind of energy. That kind of energy turns me on in the same way that if I have to give lectures or talk about my art, or even now, I can feel the adrenaline flowing through me to wake me up, to make me feel energized so that I can speak. However, in retrospect, after it's over, I don't trust that part of myself. I think that part of myself that gets energized by the contact I have with other people and the need that I have to be dynamic in my interaction with other people. I think that persona is, for me and for everybody else, a kind of corrupted persona, a kind of corrupted mask that stands between you and the world and that sort of blocks this other energy that we're talking about from coming in and making a slight twitch, a slight pulsation inside of you somewhere. That is the real material, that pulsation, that I think has to be the center of one's art.